By God's grace, I dropped my 7th album in 2022, and I decided to call it The End. It's a project I am very proud of. So I wanted to make this podcast to drive home, the heart behind everything that I wrote. This is the End.Notes podcast. Chapter 1, Hometown. What feels like home to you besides your actual home?
And when I say this next phrase, it's no shade to my parents. I had wonderful parents who raised me in the fear and admonition of the Lord. TV raised me.
Yeah.
So it's like wherever I am, like sometimes when I'm, in a hotel or some other place like that, I'll turn on the TV and look for some of these syndicated shows that are, or some of these reruns.
Yeah.
And that feels like home.
That's dope.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that feels like home to me, and this is going to feel like I juked you, but being with you and Chandra.
That feels like home too.
Nah, like there's an ease.
Right.
And, you know what I'm saying? Like when you hang with somebody and you think twice before you say things like, I'm not sure that this don't come out the wrong way.
Right.
Or I don't want them to think I'm crazy. Or, you know what I'm saying? I can't leave nothing out. And when they come over, I don't want them to think I'm, like, there's an ease like when you hang with y'all. And to me, that's part of what it means to be at home is rest, peace.
Yeah.
So like on Stone, when I'm saying I can't kick my feet up because I ain't home, tell them put that in stone. One of the reasons I'm like saying that to myself as my foot is kicked up is there's just a tension between stuff that feels like home here,
right,
while knowing it's not fully that. It's like, but that's one of the things that's beautiful about thinking about eternity is, God's giving me little glimmers and glimpses.
Right.
He's giving me little small pictures of what that home is going to be like.
Yeah.
But for now, it is both there's rest in God, there's rest and peace he gives us, but this is not the time just to rest. There's going to be a time when it's just rest.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
That's one of those promises from Jesus that I'm like, you're not just giving me rest for my body, rest for my soul.
Right.
Yeah.
There was so much I think about my life as I think about my Christian journey.
Yeah.
I think about it, from, summer of 2002, robbed at gunpoint. There was that.
Yeah.
Until April 2015, Sam died.
Yeah.
And that to me kind of is the biggest line of demarcation. From that point, I think my personality and disposition is just with all the things that I have, I just feel so content sometimes. I'm just like, God, like you've been good, right? Like, my, health has been good, family, there's things that I wanted in terms of the kids, but, I got a 2018 Camry. That was my dream car. There's Bluetooth in the car, right? So it's like there wasn't really all these things that I wanted. And so I realized one of the biggest shifts for me is when I felt like I really resonated with the words of that song after April 2015. That I think for the first part, those first 13 years, Earth did feel very much like home, and I was content. And I was grateful. I knew that I was going to be with the Lord one day, but I lived with the illusion that everything here was fine for the most part.
Yeah.
And then I feel like Sam's death was like the crack in the foundation that was like, wait a minute, this thing is not as stable as I thought. And I can't even call it the foundation. It was like the crack in the eggshell. That the eggshell seems sturdy, but all it takes is one little crack and you see, the integrity of this is not as strong as I thought it would. It'll crumble. And that's what took place for me. And I found I never longed for heaven more than I did when Sam passed, because it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This feels wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know, like, you know, it was in 2009 when your dad passed.
Yeah.
What did that do to you? Was that your first experience with death, like that close?
Well, certainly that close.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, there'd been death of relatives,
Right.
or a friend, but that close, yeah, absolutely. Death is so strange, bro.
Right.
It takes very long to set in, for me at least. It was like every day waking up, it's like it happened to me again every day.
Yeah.
Because every day of my life, I woke up with my dad being in the world.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I don't. So it's like it takes a very long time for it not to feel like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time for different realities of the fact that this person isn't here anymore to set in.
Right.
Something you would like to talk to them about that you're like, I'll never get to do that again.
Yeah.
Stuff that you wish you would have said, I'll never get a chance to say that to them.
Yeah.
You know, my dad died 2 days before I got married.
Yeah.
It's like my dad won't be able to, see me as a married man. He met Jess. He liked her. They shared some warm moments. But yeah, and he'll never know my kids. We have this picture of me, my dad, and my grandfather, because I'm named after them. It was like the three Williams. You know, this picture was like William Sr., William Jr., me. And, my son is William the Fourth. You know, we didn't get to do that for Williams picture. My grandfather's still alive. He's 95, doing great.
Right.
Chilling. You know, I hope I get those genes. But yeah, but death, definitely nothing. We know the world is broken. We know unnatural stuff happens. Nothing is as obviously unnatural as death.
Yeah.
You just feel it in your bones. It ain't supposed to be like this.
No.
Somebody not supposed to stop existing in this
Right.
world. I'm not supposed to not be able to talk to you again.
Right.
Our bodies ain't supposed to just give out on us.
Yeah.
And it shows the fragility. Like, stuff feels like certain and stable to us. And there's something about death that's like, a reminder that ain't what you think it is.
Right.
That's all made out of paper mache, bro. And it can crumble in any moment in the right storm.
Yeah.
And so again, it's like trying to hold on to that reality without living in despair.
Right.
It's like, how do I remember that without just being a depressed person?
Right.
That's like, good morning. Is it a good morning? Death is just around the corner. You know what I'm saying? No, I don't want to be like that. I also don't want to be like, no, this ain't my final home, so I feel bad whenever I enjoy stuff.
Right.
That's actually disobeying God's command to enjoy the graces that he's given us.
Ecclesiastes 9.
Paul rebukes people like that in 1 Timothy 5. It's like these people who act like they can't enjoy food or drink. Hold on, I need to remember the exact wording. He says, the Spirit says, in later times, some will abandon the faith, follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. Such teachings come through hypocritical liars whose consciences have been seared with a hot iron. He says they forbid people to marry in order then to abstain from certain foods, which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and who know the truth. For everything God created is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it's received with thanksgiving, because it's consecrated by the word of God and prayer. So it's like, we could convince ourselves, oh, no, it's more holy for me to reject some joy because this ain't my home.
Right.
And God is saying, no, that is foolishness.
Right.
That's for people who have abandoned goodness and the faith. What makes something holy is not, the holy things, the good things, and then all these terrible things. He says everything is holy. If it's received with thanksgiving and prayer. It's the posture of the heart.
That's good.
So it's not like, don't be afraid of enjoying your life.
Yeah.
That ain't what God is calling us to. That's not what it means to long for heaven.
Right.
It's receive it with thanksgiving and prayer. Receive it in a way that attaches your heart to the God who gave it more than the gift itself.
That's good. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's not meant to be an end. It's meant to be a
pathway
towards that good giver.
That's right. Yeah. Or no. It's like when your kids get a gift for Christmas from somebody that's not you, and you're like, I wish I would have gave them.
Right.
Because you know that the gift,
right,
it raises how they think of the person who gave it to them. It's like, I shouldn't have let them give them that. I should have gave them that.
Right.
Maybe you're not as selfish as me. On Stone, one of the special things about that song is me and Michelle, who's a producer that I worked with on a lot of stuff on here. Also, he was crucial to me making this because as I was sending my terrible, I didn't know if they were terrible or not.
Right.
The song ideas, the sketches. I was like, I need a real producer to affirm me before I can feel okay in this.
Yeah.
And he sat through all my disclaimers. Now, just so you know, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just be trying some things. So if it's terrible, you can tell me. Don't feel bad. You just tell me. You know what I'm saying? But not only was he like, nah, this is dope, but he understood where I was trying to go musically. Yeah. And he like, so this is the thing. Like, I have weird taste sometimes.
Yeah.
And I just like what I want to like.
Right.
Like I can be inspired by anything, even if it don't have nothing to do with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
For good and for bad. Where sometimes Jessica will be like, can you just enjoy this instead of like overanalyzing it, trying to wonder how you can incorporate it in what you're doing. But so when I go through random music phases, when I'm listening to random stuff, I'm always thinking, how can I learn from this? Like, and so one of those random music phases was like a psychedelic rock binge I was in. Right. There was like old vibes like Pink Floyd, that kind of stuff, or even newer stuff like Tame Impala, where it was just like the ways synths were used, the textures, the vibes, the feels. There was like, this is really dope little subgenre situation that's happening. And there'd be plenty of songs that you know that you just wouldn't think psychedelic rock. It's not that hard of a genre, but this, and I was like, you know what I've really been into? I don't even know if you could rock with this. Like psychedelic rock. He was like, oh yeah, I've been like making some stuff like that. And it was like, yes, these are my favorite creative people to work with. When I say something wild, because even if there was something he like hadn't really been into, he's like, oh, I'm gonna check that out. Send me some examples. I'm like, that's where I'm at creative. Let's chase that thing down. Let's figure that thing out.
That's dope.
Because if I only learn from people doing the same thing as me, then I will just do as good version of that thing that everybody's doing.
Right.
But I'm like, if I can learn from all these other sources, I can do it in a unique way.
I love it.
So Stone was like the analog synth stuff that I love. Yeah. Along with the kind of psychedelic rock vibes. It was like he got exactly what I wanted to do. And this was when he produced. I had no hand in the production in this one. And then Big Juice added like a couple, added just a little extra sauce on top. But I was like, this is the one I wish I would have produced. And it was like, he sent it, I was like, yes, that's it exactly. That is exactly it.
But I love how you talked about all those things that came in.
Yeah.
But then it was like, and then the E.K. Bailey sermon, like, where did that come? So it's psychedelic rock, synths, and then throw in a black preacher.
Yeah, that's right. That's not usually what the musicians are playing behind.
Right.
Though there is an epicness to the building.
Right, yeah.
E.K. Bailey, founding pastor of my church, Concord, first preaching I ever heard, one of my favorite preachers. Foundation of expositional preaching, or, like what's the word? A pillar.
Yeah.
And so I love to listen to his sermons, even though I have to order CDs to listen to him. And so I've always thought he's also an incredible preacher, and his voice and the way that he delivers it, I'm like, that suits the content well and grips you. And when I heard that, I was like, man, I would love to have some preacher there. And I've always like, I want to find the right moment to have some E.K. Bailey clips on there. Not only because what he's saying will be good and the way he delivers is good, but because it also has special significance to me, the role he played in my life, even though I did not have a relationship with him. The role he played in the life of my family. My parents went to the church, even before I was born. And the way he thought about preaching made it through the life of the church, so that when the current senior pastor, Brian Carter, who's still the senior pastor there, when I'm 17 years old and I preach a sermon, he very humbly, even though he's a pastor of this mega church, sits down with 17-year-old me to look at the sermon I'm working on and to give me thoughts.
Wow.
My youth pastor, Pastor Stephen Brown, I show him what I'm thinking about. He's like, don't preach from 94 passages at once. He said, pick a passage, drill down deep in that, and think about what that means. And like all of these things that have shaped who I am, that's the first way I ever thought about preaching a sermon.
Right.
Because in part of the faithfulness and legacy of expositional preaching in Concord Church from E.K. Bailey. And that conference, it's expository preaching conference every year. It's still going on. It's a dope conference. that, yeah, it's been a blessing to countless, preachers in black churches. That just, it has special significance to me, and for older members of our church, or his wife, Sister Sheila Bailey, to talk about how joyful it was for her to hear him on that, and how much he would have loved to do that for older members in the church, like Sister Harris, who when I would go to church as a kid sometime, and they'd be singing in some choir. Sister Harris, who was so sweet, who's still there for her to ask about it, be like, how can I hear that song? I love it. How can I get that?
Right.
Just contributes to the significance of it for me.
Why can I buy a tape?
Yeah, that's right.
I can't buy a physical copy and go online.
Yeah.
Chapter 2. Layers.
Even thinking about Houston, growing up there, and me moving back to Dallas after, grew up in Dallas, obviously, moved around. Yeah. But there was something about Dallas that still felt like home. It was just if I was in my mom's house and then I went to run to the grocery store, it's that Tom Thumb up the street from my mom's house,
Yeah.
On staff at the church where I met Jesus, and where, I spent, a lot of my formative years. And yeah, it just feels like there's a familiarity to it that just feels like this, even if it's just the nostalgia, something about it just feels like home. But then at the same time, there was also something about it that did it, because it was no, the last time I lived here, I was 18 years old.
Right.
It was oh, I'm gonna go eat at all the places I used to eat. All the places I used to eat was Taco Bell, Burger King.
Right.
If I was feeling particularly nice, Chili's.
Chili's, if you felt like you had a little extra bread.
Yes, that's right. So that there was I'm home, but at the same time, I can tell I'm not.
Right.
And that I think feels like part of our experience as believers, where there's a lot about this life, oh, I like this. I have this family. I have these things that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Yet there's all these very obvious things that's oh, this ain't it.
Nah, that's real.
We get used to a lot of things that don't go right, a lot of things that are broken. But at least for me, every now and then something will happen that'll shake me out of it a little bit. No.
Yeah.
Don't forget, this ain't it.
Right. So when you go back home, no part of you is I gotta hit up Williams Chicken. I just gotta go there because it's a South Dallas staple.
I love Williams Chicken so much that every time I went, I had the worst customer service I ever had in my life. I'm talking about people mad I showed up at their business. I showed up at their house and asked them for some chicken. It's no, you at work, you got a name tag on. Why are you acting like that? They'd be just drive up there and wait. We'll let you know when
the signs stay open.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, I went back the next day every time. I just kept going because
going back.
That's
John, do you do that? You don't hit up Frenchie's, Timmy Chan's, something?
Timmy Chan's, yeah. But for me, what?
Frenchie's. Frenchie's just holds a special place. It feels maybe because I'm not from Houston, I don't have the same experiences, but I love Frenchie's.
So Frenchie's didn't really hold, a special place in my heart, because as you know, Houston's so big that if you live on the north side and on the south side, it's two completely different cities.
It's two completely different cities.
We didn't have Frenchie's on the southwest side. So that was a north and northwest side or a third ward thing.
Yeah.
So all of my homies that went to college there, they had it, but I moved away when I was 18.
Yeah.
And I never moved back. So now I go back, and people ask me all the time, where's the best place to get this? And it's I go back home and everything around where I grew up changed.
Yeah.
Funplex got a gate on it. I'm trying to get some B-roll for a joint that we did. And it's why is there a gate here? So I go back home and I feel very this is home because I grew up here, but it's very apparent oh, this is not your home. The place that you grew up is no more.
Yeah.
There's something different.
Yeah. So part of why I wanted to intro a conversation like that is, I guess, for you, T-Dot, when you have these feelings of there are things I love about this life, You know, like when I think about you, bro, there's so much. Like I see so much grace in your life.
Yeah.
Part because I've known you for a long time. Also, because every time I talk to you, I learn something new about you. Also, even though I've known you for more years of my life than I didn't. That's how long I've known you.
Yes.
And yet, every time I'm around you, I'm like, wait, you was in a rodeo? You know, it always be the most random stuff. Be like, wait, what? You used to work for President Bush? It'd be like all the stuff you never expect. But when like I've seen so much grace on your life, you know, your amazing family, your amazing career as an artist.
Yeah, bro.
Bro, your intelligence, all the stuff you continuing to do. Like it, for me, I see grace on your life. And yet there's also been a lot of hardship. And so I guess one of my questions is, how do you think about this, like not being our final home? Because we could talk about it in a way that's doesn't really mean anything. That just means one day it'll be better. But does the idea that our citizenship is in heaven, does that impact how you move through life in general? I mean, before we can start talking about loss, just on a day-to-day basis, does that how you live?
It's always it's always an asterisk to my day, if that makes sense. Like it's not the thing at forefront for me, and maybe it should be more, but it's not the thing at forefront in my thought. But it is always like this asterisk, the same way that the two main concepts that stood out to me the most as a young Christian when I first got saved was to look to the hills from which cometh your help, and me going, you know, I ain't know my Bible. I was like, what hills? What are they talking about? Like I was really confused, but I was like, God, I'm looking for you. Where do I look? But the draw that I needed to have to go seek the Lord where he is versus getting caught up with what I see, that stood out. And then also this idea that Peter spoke about of like, we're just sojourners passing through. Like that's always an asterisk in my mind when I think about my daily life and being a believer, trying to engage in a certain way in this world. And so I think for me, that led me to say, everyday living, my affections are gonna have to be in check, because there's a lot of stuff here that is enjoyable, just not even from a fleshly standpoint, just a pleasure standpoint. It is enjoyable to just, like for me, when I come from outside into air conditioning, that is enjoyable.
It's one of the greatest feelings, bro.
It's one of the most amazing. I don't know why we don't have an AC holiday. Like whoever made that, they need their own holiday, bro. Conditioning it's so amazing. I'm like, I get why people was angry at each other in the 70s, man. They had no AC to go into. Everybody had window units or nothing at all. No central air. I was like, yo, this changed the game for life. I'm like, so there are things that I enjoy on earth, and yet I know there's
more examples.
Oh yeah, I got you.
About the asterisk, like Hamilton. This surprised me and Lecrae. You know what I'm saying? We like I watch Hamilton and I appreciate the art, and I'm like, oh man, it's just bars. And the King, especially, like that's fire.
King is amazing.
I haven't watched it. I don't watch it or listen to it in the morning while getting ready, but that leads me back to you, Tedashii.
Hey John, so listen. You know how Trip is like asking a sincere question with tons of shade attached to it?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's a gift of his, bro. It's a gift. Like, so I don't know how many people know this, but I love musical theater. Not all musical theater, because some of it is on a level of cheesiness I don't enjoy. Nevertheless, I know for some people, all of it is cheesy. However, Hamilton, I think the main reason I got into Hamilton was because it humbled me. Like, I saw that and I was like, man, look at these people who don't rap doing rap. Like they just, coming in, co-opting the culture for Broadway. Like what black person running Broadway? Man, forget them, man. Yeah. And then I sat down and watched it. And I already understood a little bit about musical theater, being a theater student and all this other stuff. But when I watched it, I was so impressed with the storyline, the dancing, the plotting, the way they used that set, the songs themselves. Then I started reading about Hamilton and I was like, now what a great depiction of my man's life. So I watch it every day, almost every day. Like the truth ain't.
All right. Oh, Dad, he said every day.
Yeah, and
Every day, bro. Look, just look at you.
This was me. This was me and Craig when Lecrae was a little more aggressive with his surprise, but
yes.
he's like, bro, what type of dude is you? But I will say, I'm disappointed by your answer because you're such a thoughtful person that I can't even laugh anymore because you talking about how it encouraged you and you took like a good life lesson from it. So,
I did. It moved me, man. Now on the surface, you just see a big dude with braids and he a little country, but he also mixed. And then you go like, what are you doing? Like Lecrae, for real. Lecrae was like, Hamilton, why?
Yeah,
man, you mixed for real, bro. Like it was like, do mixed people just like musical theater? Like, what are you trying to say? Yeah. Like, it was hilarious.
Tedashii, my introduction to you was musical theater. You and my brother were in the Wiz.
We was in the Wiz together.
That's how we met. Him and Sam were in the Wiz at Sam Houston State.
Tedashii was in the Wiz.
I was in a production of the Wiz.
And that's how I met.
This is what I'm talking about. Every time I talk to you, bro, I learn some other random fact.
This is 20 years ago.
Bro, I've seen you easing on down the road even now.
Easing on down the road, bro.
Okay, I'm sorry. I put us on the tangent, though. You was about to say stuff you enjoy in the asterisk.
Yes, in the asterisk. So Hamilton, musical theater, but music, just in general. Music is, and not that these things can't exist in heaven or exist in eternity, but to know that they are experienced in a certain way here with nostalgia and experiences that go back a certain ways, like those things matter in a big way that make me want to be here. And then I know we're going to talk about lost some, but to be honest, one of the biggest examples is my kids.
Yeah.
And just knowing that one day they're going to be here and I'm not. Like that is a I won't say struggle anymore, but it's definitely still a hard thing to wrap my mind around.
Yeah.
To think that, man, my relationship with my kids is temporal. Now it may be eternal to some extent, but for all intents and purposes, like my engaging of them in the way I do now is temporal. And I just kind of go, man, that's different than, oh, my kids grew up and moved out. I'm not here anymore to be touched, to be experienced, to be spoken to. And that, just the thought of that is weird to me, and it's a struggle. And if I'm honest, that's probably one of the main struggles that make me want to remove the asterisk, remove the consideration of eternity or not living, that this world is not my home, my final home. So it's tough in that regard.
Yeah. And so for you then, even as it's a good leader and you talk about your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so for people that don't know, can you talk about Chase and then talk about how the reality of eternity and even that our citizenship is in heaven, how that, has impacted how you navigate that?
Yeah. So for people who don't know, my wife, Danielle, and I, we have 4 boys. 3 are here with us now. And one of them, my second son, Chase, passed away in March of 2013. He was 1 year and 1 week old. And I tell everybody, of course, that was the hardest day of my life. I was coming home from an event, found out about what happened over the phone as I landed back in Dallas, and then rushed home and connected with Danielle. And the next few days or moments were very surreal, because it's just, anyone who's gone through any kind of loss can relate. Like, you just don't know how to make that make sense when for so long a person was a part of your world, or the dreams of what could be with that person were a part of your life. And you just go, well, what do I do now? How do I move? How do we relate? How do I engage again? What do I do? And so for the longest time, the thought of eternity was an offense. I was like, so now I got to wait to get to there to be with him again? Like, for real? Well, that's lame. And without proper perspective, I feel as though I would have just punted the idea of it altogether, honestly, because hurt was driving me that much to want to ignore what I believed most of my life. And so I feel like one of the things that makes my kids a struggle of leaving them now, the ones that are here still living, is this idea of, one, I don't want them to feel the loss that I felt. Like that was really hard.
Yeah.
But then two, at the time, Jaden was the oldest son, and then there was Chase, and the other two weren't born yet. But Jaden was the sense of normalcy in my life. When grief was throwing me around and having its way with me, Jaden was the thing that centered me again and brought me back to reality, because he needed a dad. He needed normal stuff. Hey, Dad, I'm hungry. Hey, Daddy, can we go play? Hey, Daddy, where's the water? Daddy, can you help me get my toy? Daddy, can you? And in all the moments that I wanted to check out, he would make me check back in to go be who I was again. And so even in that moment, you know, I don't have this, you know, as a dad with sons, I don't have this thing in me like my son can play football and he's going to be amazing and I'm going to live through him and what he does. I'm more so in a different way, like, man, I don't want to lose any of you. So why would I leave you? Why the thought of leaving you is sad to me. So that dependence, in a sense, or codependence of like, Jaden, thanks for giving me normalcy. Let me stay at the depth that went to, let's maintain that, right, has been a wrestle to remove, because I'm like, you're growing up and you're not going to stay that 4-year-old who needed me so much. And you're about to be a teenager and you're not going to look to me the same way you did. So the thought of that change is difficult, but then to know like one day I'm leaving you, that's where the wrestle really comes in. And so I have to then go back to the thought of scripture and just going, man, I'm just passing through. Like, this isn't my home for real. And I know in that moment there should be a level of joy, but grief has kind of tainted that some. Yeah. And so in your song, Stone, you talk about this idea. How did the bar go? You said, can't live for profit, they pay us.
Live like the prophet Isaiah.
Right.
But I
my hopes in later, but I grind now. It's layers. And I was like, that's my life.
Yeah.
That's my life. It's like, I'm living for later. Yes, I know as a Christian, I'm living for later, God. But man, it's layers to this. Like, if y'all could just see how the wrestle and the strength I gotta have to live for later, when now is so much more precious to me. Like, this is a different world out here. So you saying that, bro, it was like, I mean, of course I'm just impressed by the lyricism, but it's still just like, he's lived through it. He knows, like, yo, it's layers to this. I want to go there. I long for that in my heart of hearts, knowing that it's the right thing to do. But man, it's hard to do that some days when here feels so much comforting, because it's been also filled with so much hardship and loss. So I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Chapter 3. Can't just wait.
I think sometimes people assume like, oh, if I say, here's my friend Tedashii, and his understanding that this life isn't all there is has helped him to navigate some of the difficulties of his life.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would assume that what I meant was, when he's reminded of that, it becomes easy for him to make it through. Or
right.
He just reminds himself of that, and then it's coasting from there.
Mm-hmm.
What I would love people to hear is, especially for somebody like you, Tedashii, who, you know, in part because of the stuff you've gone through, you have worked really hard at being in a healthy place.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard for people to put together just like what we're saying, my hopes in later, but we grind right now. It's later.
Yeah.
Like, not only do I remind myself of these truths, but there's also hard work I do beyond that to help that sink in a real way.
Yeah,
There's
bro.
stuff in my heart that blocks that truth from sitting where it should. Can you talk about some of the other stuff just to help people think of, how do I navigate all this difficulty while trying to grab onto that truth?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say this for people watching. I don't want there to be, I would hope for people, they wouldn't live with a level of guilt or shame because they're conflicted about maybe their passions for this earth or this world is greater than it should be. There's a level of love and appreciation for what I have, and that doesn't need to be tainted or marred by the idea that maybe I'm loving here too much. I want to help kind of free some people in that level, because I lived with that shame of like, but I'm supposed to be longing for heaven, but God, it's been so rough here. I just want some good days. Like when the good days do happen, God, I love it here when the good days happen. So I've had to kind of, and I hope this answers your question. I've kind of had to shift from when the good days happens, that means this place is good. So I want more of this place. But I had to shift it to realize, like, when the good days come, those good days are from my God in heaven, who will give me those days for eternity when I'm with him.
Right.
It's just hard to really realize that when it's not tangible to your senses. That's, I think, where the real struggle comes in for me. But I'm like, no, even if it's not tangible, I do believe every good and perfect gift comes from the Lord, from the Lord on high. And so I'm like, I gotta be able to notice when this day was good, when me and my kids had fun, and I feel like there was enough moments with them that they'll have memories, and these good memories from these times. And I feel like, man, I was able to do something for them that I long to do for them, or I was able to help guide with words, or, even discipline. Like, just, I've done something to love you well. I want that to, and that seems like it will be lasting for you.
Yeah.
What a good day. And God, if this horrible version of living on this earth has moments like this, then when we get to the utopian idea of where you will be for eternity, where we're with you, how much better will it be? And that question right there, how much better, that was a wrestle to get to. And I think not for everybody probably, but for me, it was a wrestle, because I'm like, well, God, like everybody really, God, this bad thing happened in my life. How could you let that be a thing? Why would this be a thing? I don't understand it. So if this thing can happen to me here, I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want to be nowhere near you. And in my darkest moments, that's what I thought and felt, until I realized I was assigning God all the blame and forgetting all the blessing. I was assigning God all of the bad and never stopping to go, but what is the good that you've given me, God? Yeah. And I get it, because some things are just heavy. Like losing a kid is heavy. Losing family members, a brother or whoever, man, is heavy, a father. And you're just like, okay, God, this is heavy. And I still got to look through this heaviness to see the yoke that you've given me is lighter still than what I would have been carrying. Like, I don't know, God. But when I think about the feeling of, and not to minimize it, but when I think about the feeling of, and I wasn't capping, like when I get home and I get into the AC, I take my shoes off, I sit down, I turn on the show, my kids come sit around me. Ain't no place like home. And if that is real for here, how much more is it real for us who are sojourning to get to him? And that was the final, I think, thing that made me go, this asterisk needs to remain, because I don't ever want to lose that. Now, I know some people view that and they think about it from a stay away from sin standpoint, or like protect myself from whatever. And you can do that, but I don't want to minimize God's goodness just to my shortcomings. Like, well, God is good and I need to remember that because I don't want to fall into sin. It's like, no, I want to get closer to him. And if I lose sight of his goodness, when the bad does happen, it's going to overwhelm me. I got to make sure I'm focused on that goodness. So ain't no place like home. I got to remember that when it comes to the fact that I'm just passing through.
That's good. I have two more questions to ask. One is, can you just real briefly like talk about the role that therapy has played in you and your family being in a really good, healthy place, while still longing for a home, wanted to be good here, and just,
Yeah. When Christ spoke about an abundant life that he was giving us, I know that was that can be spiritualized into meaning things of eternity, experienced on earth. But I believe even in my everyday living, Christ is wanting me to experience the shalom that God can bring into the life of a Christian.
Yeah.
In order for me to experience shalom, I had to surrender. And a lot of times when it came to therapy, I wasn't willing to surrender. I wasn't willing to say, okay, I'm one of 7 billion. I don't know everything. I don't have the monopoly on God, peace, grace, whatever. What can I do outside of myself? And it was really friends who kept telling me, it's therapy, bro. You need to go to therapy. And when I went, I didn't realize that I was cracked in certain places and needed mending. And my just trying harder wasn't going to get the job done. But I needed someone skilled in the art of therapy and walking with people in mental health crises to say, hey, let me be the friend that you need that you didn't know you needed.
Right.
Like that is what my therapist has become. You know, and they're not buddy. Like, I don't know where they live. I don't go over their house or nothing. But it's like, yo, but you're a friend. You're an ear. You're a voice of reason and wisdom in a moment when I didn't even know I needed that. And you do it in a way so skilled. I didn't even realize that I was lacking in some of these things when it comes to having something that I needed. And so to wrap it up, like in a pretty bow, therapy provided me the tools I needed and helped me to lay down the tools I no longer needed. All I knew.
Say a little bit more about what you mean by the tools you no longer.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Dr. Bruce Perry, who's a neurologist and a psychologist, he says in his book, he did a book with Oprah Winfrey, What Happened to You? He says when we go through traumatic events, every human naturally reverts back to the reptilian part of their brain, the part of your brain, the smallest part of your brain, where all of your base level behaviors exist. So at the moment of trauma, every person reverts back to what it was like when they were 6 and they were just like fight or flight. What do I do? And you respond in a way that you can't really formulate because you're in that part of your brain. You can't get to the frontal lobe to formulate adult, coherent, mature thoughts. You're just responding in a knee-jerk reaction. In a knee-jerk reaction, every human reverts back to the reptilian part of their brain. That's what psychologists, psychiatrists, neurologists say. When that happens, you're not able to formulate coherent thoughts. Yeah. You're able to do what you know, what you grew up with, what you saw in your base level, youngest parts of your life. Yeah. So if his research and teachings are true, which most would agree with, when I'm going through a traumatic moment, I revert back to what I saw when I was a kid, what was normal and typical for what I grew up. And for me, what I saw growing up, when people went through hard stuff, they dismissed it, they ignored it, they isolated, they stayed to themselves, they drank a lot, they smoke a lot, they they seek pleasure and escape a lot. And I unknowingly reverted back to that. That was in me. Yeah. And what I needed to do was surrender enough to say, hey, therapist, you're saying this about me, but I wouldn't naturally choose that. And she's like, you're right. You wouldn't choose that, but your body is reverting naturally back to those things as a safety mechanism. You need to be aware of that so you can do something different. And it took me acquiring new tools to be able to say, I feel myself reverting back. Time to implement breathing control. Time to implement moments of meditation. Time to implement, let's run to the scriptures and not just read to be spiritual, but actually look through the text at verses that promise peace and a mind that God will keep in perfect peace, which surpasses all understanding. I had to fight in those moments to not revert back, because in those moments, I'm gonna run, I'm gonna be pleasure seeking, self-centered, and I won't really be able to formulate coherent thoughts. And so I had to lay down those tools as best I could and pick up new tools that would prevent me from going back to that place. Because when I do, my family suffers, my friends suffer, my community suffers, everything else suffers. And I had to stop and go back. And so therapy has literally changed my life. I believe, last October, I know God gave me a breakthrough. And I know that's a spiritual thing that can happen. But I know I got there partly because I did therapy. Yeah. And that breakthrough put me in a place to where the bitterness and resentment and the anger I had toward God and other people, it just washed away. And those tools that I had, like in grief, I got so worried about not being good enough for the people who said I needed to be strong in my faith. And I got so worried about the people who was like, hey man, you don't look so good, what you doing? That I started to put up walls and isolate myself. But that's me going back to what I saw growing up. And pretty soon I was in such an unhealthy place because no one knew where I was. No one was talking with me. I wasn't talking to them. By the time it was all said and done, I was having suicidal thoughts and not knowing why. And I was like, therapy was the thing that helped me to recognize it most, not just to over spiritualize it and say Satan's busy. I mean, he was, but it was also like, hey, naturally what you saw growing up, that's in you. You're going to have to do work to dig that up. And so the therapist gave me new tools to be able to do that.
It's amazing.
I would love to know, especially as we start to talk about grief and all that stuff. I think so often, people can feel like, or they can hear you talk and say, yo, it's been 9 years, right? I would love to get to the place that he's gotten, and they would use you as some barometer or a finish line for what to do with grief. Can you just talk about how living with that grief, that enduring grief that's still there, just talk about how maybe that's textured the relationship that you have with the Lord or the relationship you have with Danielle?
Yeah. That is a great question, by the way. I definitely, and I say this, I think, with a level of humility and grace. I don't ever want to try to communicate to someone that my grieving ended because time has passed. This is something that I live with every day. I read this book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it talks about how trauma remains in the body long after the event has taken place. And he likened losing a loved one to losing a limb, and how soldiers that come back from war wake up with a missing leg, but it feels like they have leg pain when they wake up until they look down and realize, oh, wait. And it's like their body still remembers that. They feel that. I still wake up with days thinking I'm going to go pick him up. I still wake up with days looking and going, man, Jaden's 12. Chase would be 10. Like, he'd have somebody in his age bracket playing with him right now. I still wake up looking at Danielle and going like, I mean, I think Danielle's an amazing woman. Why did she have to go through that? Like, that's just, and then a mom, like, why would you, she carried and birthed this kid and now he gone, like, that ain't right. And so all of those things are still there and they're real. And what I have to do, even when it comes to, you said texture, my relationship with the Lord, like, I have to go to God and remember with everything in me and believe that it's valid, that my personable Savior understands and recognizes what it means to be forsaken and left by everyone but the Lord, his Father. And I have to look at the Father and go, but you know what it is to sacrifice as well. Lord, let that be a comfort today. And so the work for this to still be a fight to hold on to what God says is true, still very real. The grief is still very real. The difference is, though, and I think this is what I think in a shallow way, when people say time heals all wounds, I think that's a very ambiguous and shallow statement to really just communicate over time, you've learned how to live with it. Like, it didn't heal the wound. I'm still wounded, but I've learned how to live with my wound. And there are days that I'll have to attend to my wound, and there are days that I won't. But to say that it's healed is a misnomer, in my opinion. I think you just learn to live with it.
It's amazing. In 15 seconds or less, what's another weird Tedashii fact that people don't know about your life? Something you did, a past life.
I love how intrigued you of all that. That's so funny.
Because to me, it's part of why you are the most interesting man in the world. Because you've lived so many lives. Right.
I have, bro. I have.
But to me, that's why you are you. Like, all the stuff is like, she's so unique. It's like
range, bro.
Yeah, range. That's right.
So in Houston, Texas, I went to TSU to visit an event and ended up walking up and meeting my cousin who was there working for Tavis Smiley. And I ended up becoming friends with Tavis Smiley and hanging out with him and having meals and learning from him. And he is one of the reasons why I fell in love with being a communicator, I didn't realize he was a PhD with literature and English and all that. He's a super intelligent man, went through the Me Too issues, Me Too issues and all that. But for me as a young Black man growing up looking for role models, Tavis was definitely one of them, bro. And I just remember thinking to myself, I get to meet all my heroes at some point in life. Mm-hmm. And so God has always been able to grace me with that. But that's one of the biggest for me is I got to go to DC and meet Tavis Smiley, Houston, Tavis Smiley. And I went to DC and I met Connie Chung, Ted Koppel, Dan Rather, all these newscasters, bro. I love that.
But this is exactly it. This is exactly it. And the reason I just said to Lecrae, we held you back in life. You were supposed to do much greater things than be running around with us rapping. Bro, thank you so much.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate
Thank y'all so much, man. I appreciate y'all, man. This was enjoyable.
The End.Notes podcast is presented by Our Daily Bread's Voices Collection, and that Voices Collection is meant to share Black Christian stories of faith through resources and conversations, all Bible-centered, to help try to make God's word understandable for everybody and accessible to everybody. So if you want to know more about Our Daily Bread's Voices Collection, you can go to experiencevoices.org.